So just want to extend a warm welcome on behalf of all the learning associates tonight. Thank you, Jim and Rita, for coming. And thank you, John and Irene, also for being willing to share some information about your involvement with UUSC. I'm going to light the chalice, and then I'm going to share some words, opening words. So this is called A Spark of Hope by Melanie Davis. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice.
Thank you. And I'd just like to share a little bit about the Learning Associates. That this group is committed to the learning component of the mission of South Church. We strive to deepen Unitarian Universalist faith formation and relationships within and among the communities of our congregation and the larger UUA community. And we offer programs like What's Up, discussion series for members to learn about and connect with the wider Unitarian Universalist community. And so today is intended to provide an overview, as Valerie just said, of the UUSC. Okay.
And again, thank you, John and Irene, who are long-term supporters of the UUSC and are also South Church members, for coming here today and telling us more about the work of the UUSC. And I'll just pass the floor on to you, Irene and John, to share whatever you'd like to share.
Okay, thank you, Valerie.
You're welcome.
If you were at the May 5th Justice Sunday service led by Reverend Mary Catherine Mourn, who's president of the Unitarian Universalist Society, you probably know quite a bit. But for those who might not have been there, the UUSC is a nonprofit, non-sectarian organization whose mission is advancing human rights and social justice around the world. They partner with organizations on the ground, those who confront unjust power structures and who are mobilizing to challenge oppressive policies. Its work is grounded in the belief that all people have inherent power and dignity, and the UUSC takes direction from their partners, supplying funds, encouragement, and expertise. Up to you, I'll get that phone.
Okay, I'm going to read a little bit about the history of the UUSC, which is actually quite interesting. In any event, things began in 1939 when many Unitarians wanted to give assistance to the victims of persecution in Europe. And the American Unitarian Association raised funds and sent Waitstill, I guess is how you pronounce it, Waitstill, Sharp and his wife, Martha Sharp, to Prague, where there was a large Unitarian church. I've read that it was the largest Unitarian church in the world in those days. In any event, they started there to administer relief to refugees. In doing this work, the Sharps worked closely with the American Friends Service Committee and the World YMCA. Waitstill Sharp was a Unitarian minister. He was a reverend. His wife was not. During the same period, Robert Dexter, a man named Robert Dexter, was head of social relations at the American Unitarian Association. Not quite sure what that position meant, but in any event, went to Europe himself to create a network of relief workers. And under his leadership, a committee was formed to help endangered refugees. And that happened in 1940. And in May of that year, the committee was officially founded as the Unitarian Service Committee, the predecessor, or the actual committee today, except for the appendage of the Unitarian Universalist Association. The Sharps were made the heads of newly formed UUSC. From May of 1941, they had a base in Lisbon, outside of where the Nazis controlled countries. Portugal was neutral in those days. From there, they continued their work to administer relief to refugees, and they were able to help a number of Jewish children and Jewish intellectuals escape from Vichy, France. It's interesting, many years later, we went to the 75th anniversary ceremony of the creation of UUSC. And some of these children, now quite elderly, actually attended the ceremony. The Sharps departed from Europe at the end of 1940, but in 1943, Martha founded the Children of Palestine to raise money for orphan Jewish children in order for them to start a new life in Palestine. And in 1944, she returned to Europe to become the Associate European Director of the UUSC. The Sharps actually divorced in 2004, but they were separated for quite some time. After that, they both remarried. In 2005, both were honored by the Israeli Historical Remembrance Organization, Vad Vashem. And they are also honored in the U.S. Holocaust Museum and in a documentary movie made by Ken Burns. I will say that Martha, when she remarried a wealthy Jewish man and got quite involved with Jewish efforts for Israel. So that's kind of the history. It's been going since 1940 and doing lots of good things. Both Irene and I have been involved with it for many years. Kind of forgotten when we became involved with it. I was on the finance committee. I just graduated. I guess you could say I retired. I think there's a meeting in May, which would be my last meeting, but I've been on it for 8 years or so. And it's a wonderful organization. They have meetings, people who are deeply involved with it several times during the year, which we tend to go to, and they're quite interesting as well.
Yeah, there's a group called Stewards. We're a pair of the stewards who tend to go to these meetings, and they usually have one on innovations, which is a smaller group, but they're quite a. I don't know how many stewards there are at this point. It must be about 150. And these are people who contribute financially and also take part in, take trips with the UUSC to some of their partner organizations.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you knew or know Bill Schultz. We were friends of Bill's. Bill was quite dynamic in getting people to sign on as stewards. And then his favorite trick was at the stewards meeting, there could be 75 or 80 people there. And he would go around the room without any notes and name everybody. And it was...
and where they were from.
It was interesting to see him do it. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing it myself, but anyway, he's quite dynamic. He actually spoke at South Church too, probably about 10 years ago, I think. And
he's the former president of the UUSC.
Yeah, he was involved with Amnesty International. He was also in his younger days head of the UUA. That's when we got to know him initially. In any event, he was very dynamic. He was quite successful when he came to South Church. So it's too bad we couldn't have him come back. He's still active, I think, although we haven't seen him in quite some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll speak just for a couple of seconds more, and then we have a video for you. I wanted to tell you what the UUSC's strategic priorities are. There are really three. The first is climate and disaster justice for populations at risk to displacement. So these are people in island communities where climate change is really having a dire effect. also Alaska. The second priority is international justice and accountability in the face of large-scale disasters. So often when there's a major disaster, they'll mobilize to do funding or work in special ways. And the third priority is migration justice at the US border. So rather than working directly on its priorities, the UUSC works with an international community of grassroots partners and advocates. And we have a short video to give you a taste of the work with some of their partners. It begins in Spanish, but it has subtitles, and then there'll be portions in English. So Anne, it would be great to put the video on.
Let me just add that the focus is on marginalized groups, so it's not like if there's a disaster area, we go in and help. The UUSC goes in and helps the general population. A lot of other organizations do that. But it's really sort of people like gay, lesbian groups that may not otherwise get aid. So the focus is on those kinds of groups. Okay, we could run the video.
Okay. Oops. And I just clicked away from it.
Bueno, este es un espacio donde están muchas de nuestras ancestras, como Berta Cáceres, Margarita Murillo, que fueron defensoras y que fueron asesinadas. El altar es una fuente de energía para nosotras y así vamos formando este espacio que mantiene encendida nuestra esperanza. Honduras es un país que históricamente ha tenido altos índices de violencia contra las mujeres.
Bueno, el Foro de Mujeres por la Vida es un espacio que trabaja por la defensa de los derechos humanos de las mujeres, pero que también establece un proceso de incidencia social y política para la denuncia.
UUSC answered the request of our partners in Honduras in 2018 in the wake of increased killings of human rights defenders.
Today, Foro de Mujeres is an example of the UUSC approach, identifying a need, building relationships rooted in trust, and collaborating on solutions that center those facing injustice. For the last 80 years, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee has pushed back against oppression, racism, and injustice.
UUSC's work began in 1939 when Reverend Waitstill and Martha Sharp from Massachusetts took an extraordinary risk to help refugees who were escaping Nazi persecution in Europe.
In 1940, the Sharps established a charitable organization to formalize their bold humanitarian service. From Ethiopia to Nicaragua, Kentucky to Haiti, UUSC and its members have passionately mobilized for our collective liberation.
Our engagement with partners begins in the midst of crisis, responding to immediate and urgent need. Our strategy and our partners' work, though, is always designed to create systemic change. The heart of our work is a vision of human rights for all. We work with people who have lost the right to be in the place they've always called home, people who are facing arrest and violence for demanding their rights, people who are creating sustainable alternatives to violent and extractive economies and governments.
In places like Burma, UUSC supports a grassroots movement of Rohingya youth, demanding justice for those who have been killed and displaced by the Burmese military.
Today, Burma really represents UUSC's commitment to its values, and our engagements there on the Rohingya issue in particular kind of stem from the continuity of UUSC really working through its values.
In Nepal, UUSC supported a just recovery to the devastating 2015 earthquakes, working with women, indigenous people, and Dalits.
In crisis response situations, we are aiming to support groups that have been historically oppressed, who are more likely to see that oppression exacerbated in a post-crisis situation. They're also most likely to be left out of mainstream responses. Working with Native and Indigenous people in the U.S. and the Pacific, one of the things that we're hoping to do is shift the narrative around climate change and how the climate crisis is impacting First and Indigenous people particularly. And in that case, recently we supported the filing of a complaint with the UN Special Rapporteur on internally displaced people.
We are at a critical juncture in our history against a rising tide of white nationalism, authoritarianism, racism, and violent intolerance. UUSC and its members are bearing witness and taking action.
Desde el Foro de Mujeres por la Vida, la construcción de muros, especialmente en centros educativos como acá, es también transmitirles a las niñas y a esa generación de adolescentes que puedan recuperar su territorio cuerpo, que lo defiendan, que lo protejan, pero también mandar un mensaje al público que transita para que también vaya adquiriendo un nivel de conciencia, no solamente por respetar nuestro territorio cuerpo, sino también por cuidar y defender nuestro territorio tierra.
Bueno, nosotras pensamos o hemos hecho la reflexión que primero nuestra primera defensa es nuestro territorio cuerpo, así le llamamos, que somos nosotras, nuestro derecho a decidir, a vivir una vida libre de violencia, pero ese territorio cuerpo está totalmente conectado al territorio tierra, ¿verdad? A nuestros ríos, a nuestras montañas, a nuestro país en general. Entonces, una cosa no se puede defender si no se defiende la otra. UUSC ha apoyado económicamente para que nosotras como organización podamos hacer cosas que a veces no tenemos las capacidades aquí. Pero también ha sido como un proceso de hermanamiento, de apoyo, ¿verdad? Ha sido muy importante, por ejemplo, que compañeras de USC vengan cuando pasan situaciones graves aquí en el país, que vengan el hermanamiento con la delegación, ¿verdad? Conocer los rostros, ver que tenemos una visión bastante similar y que es una relación de mucha confianza también.
It's a privilege to partner with communities around the world, demanding their rights and building sustainable lives for their families. Your support year after year makes all of this possible. We have 80 years of vivid memories of struggle, hard work, loss, and triumph. Our hope, and most of all our commitment, are for a future filled with dignity, community, and collective liberation for all.
Thanks, Anne.
Just want to say that Kirsten has come into the room, so she's joined us.
Hi, Kirsten.
Great. And I'm going to share the link for the UUSC just in the chat for anyone who wants that reference. Sorry, go ahead.
I thought I'd end by telling you what the UUSC has available to South Church. The website has many different kinds of materials that can be downloaded and used by congregations like ours. There are advocacy resources and letters, how to lobby, submitting public comments on proposed literature, writing letters to the editor, much of what we do. There are also webinars, and I'd like to tell you about one in particular called Immigration is a Human Right, UUSC's Congregational Accompaniment Project for Asylum Seekers. Its initials are CAPAS, C-A-P-A-S, and it's because asylum is a human right. And throughout history and around the world, people have found ways to accompany, shelter, and defend the rights of those who are at risk of persecution. UUSC's CAPAS program supports communities of faith as they host and accompany individuals and families seeking safety through the process of obtaining legal asylum. in the United States. Churches are invited to join the UUSC in this journey of welcoming people, exercising their human right to migrate, and resisting our government's immigration policies. There are also newsletters. There's an electronic newsletter called Toward Justice that's delivered to your inbox for updates on the human rights work, including partner updates and educational information and opportunities to get involved. And this is sent to anyone who's made a contribution to the UUSC in the last 12 months. There's also a twice yearly newsletter called Rights Now that details the UUSC work with grassroots partners and all around the globe. And it's mailed to donors who are official members in that they've given $40 or more in the past 12 months. There are also materials for children and adults, including materials for worship services. There's the Guest at Your Table program, which unfortunately is not been active since the pandemic. Sample lesson plans, stories, and games. So I'm glad Ann put the website up because it's worth checking out for more information about what's available to our Social Action Committee and to South Church more generally.
Okay, I think it's time for people to ask questions if you have any. Or we can have a dialogue. Kristen was here at a lunch where Mary Catherine and Kate Friedman, two people from the UUSC were present. So she may have a few words to add to what we've said, but in any event, does anybody have a question or a comment for that matter that they would like to make?
I have a comment, and I'd love to open it to other people as well. But so for me, your involvement, John and Irene, and bringing Mary Catherine to South Church was my first exposure to UUSC. And I was really moved because I am very much into human equal justice, and to know that this organization that represents UU, the Unitarian, and was doing this wider global work, I'm like on board. It's like, oh my God, it's like, why wouldn't I? It's what we are all about on a wider scale. So I just want to thank you because I did join. I feel proud to be a member, and I'm just going to open myself up to getting more involved. But I'm curious about, that was my moment that I'm always going to have, how you guys impacted me. But how did you guys first hear, and what was your motivation to join at the time that you did?
It was a long time.
It's so long ago.
So, well, Irene can respond and then I can add my comment.
Well, I think we met Bill Schultz.
Yeah.
And had a wonderful conversation with him, and it sparked some of the same things that Mary Catherine sparked for you, Valerie. He explained about developing the stewardship circle as a basic support group for the UUSC, and invited us to join.
Yeah, he was, we met him, we were living in California at the time, and he was head of the UUA. And so we met him then, which I don't know, goes back a long time, I guess.
Very long time.
In any event, we got to know him a little bit. He was, for a period after being head of the UUA at Amnesty International, he was head of the US chapter of that. I'm trying to remember, I don't think I had contact with him there, although we had some mutual trips to countries. In any event, we had supported the UUA for some time, And I think Bill knew that, and so he wanted to increase the frankly, the financial depth of the UUSC. So he began this stewardship program as a way of raising money, part of it's current gifts, part of it's legacy gifts. And so he came and talked to us, and that's how we got involved. But it had to be 30 years ago, I'm thinking, quite some time ago. So that's how we got involved, largely through Bill, and then we've met all kinds of other people in the organization as well.
Thank you. Kirsten or anybody, comment or questions? Jim?
Rita had unmuted, so I think maybe she had something. Go ahead, Rita. Did you?
Oh, okay. I have a question about the staff. They mentioned staff several times in that video, and it was looking to me like the staff was of the nationality or the group that the service was being done with, or that the group was working with. So I wonder how that all works and how large, quote, the staff is, or how they do the work, like structure the work with groups in the countries that are chosen.
Well, I can respond to that, and Irene can comment on it. The UUSC is not just around to give money away to the groups. Staff likes to be actively involved with the groups. So it's not one of these organizations that, some group comes and asks for money, and it's not that kind of charity. And they actually seek out types of organizations with which they want to work. And so the staff is quite active in that regard. The headquarters of the UUSC is in Cambridge. They had their own building there, which they sold for a tidy sum of money a couple of years ago. So a lot of the staff now work somewhat remote. And some of the staff have a diverse background in the sense of they may have a history of not being US citizens, what have you. So they're quite engaged with the different partners, and the staff is disregarding the administrative staff. They have all administrative staff as well, but the partner people are probably in the neighborhood of about 10 to 15, maybe 20.
I think the entire staff is probably about 35 people, roughly.
Something
There's a
like
picture, if you go to the website, you can meet the staff. There's a video, meet the staff, and they'll talk about their work. They also there's obviously a development component. There's a research component. There's the College of Social Justice, which they do jointly with the UUA. As well as the people who work with the partners.
Thank you.
And we as a congregation have interacted with the College of Social Justice. That group is the group that led the 2 different trips that happened to Nicaragua. The College of Social Justice does that kind of immersive learning kinds of experiences to help build people's connection to these different communities and issues. And then that grows people's investment in giving as well.
Jim had a question, I think.
I did. Irene, you mentioned asylum as a human right, and you gave an acronym, CAPAS. Would you say that again? And the reason I'm asking is the Immigrant Support Fund Oversight Team is going to be meeting with Social Justice Associates to see if we can't do some things to make South Church more active, more directly involved in supporting asylum seekers.
It's CAPAS, CAPAS.
Okay.
And I can tell you it's called the Congregational Assessment Project for Asylum Seekers.
Okay.
There'll be a test in that, Jim, so.
I'm writing it down. As
There's
long as I can
another,
look at my notes.
there's another.
Oh, go ahead.
Jim, are you active with an organization? I think it's Dover-based, doing this kind of work. They just had an art auction that I contributed art to.
Yeah.
I know Lori Bilby contributed art to.
Yeah, well, that's two things that were involved there. The art auction was run by the Durham Community Church, UCC, because
Yes.
they are sponsoring particular people, but they're one of I would say about 10 congregations in the Seacoast Interfaith Sanctuary Coalition, which was started in 2017 when some Dover's Indonesian people were going to be deported if we didn't do something about it. So that's been active now since 17, and have worked with that's the group that worked with us when we were housing people who came out of jail back in COVID time, and we were giving them the 2 weeks of quarantine space. So it's an organization that is all volunteer, and it's kind of evolved, and it's whatever's happening at the moment. Right now, we're starting to work more on raising funds. We've just spent $6,000 out of our own South Church Immigrant Support Fund to help people with legal fees and bonding to get out of jail. So that's kind of re-energized us, because for quite a while now we haven't had any requests. So we're kind of going along and saying, okay, well, nobody's asking for anything. Now they are, and I think that's we're thinking that we're going to do a lot in September. We have quite a few ideas of things to do in September.
Well, it may be worth getting in touch with the people running Kappas.
Well, that's what I'm thinking of, that this could be helpful.
Yeah.
And I linked,
Jim,
I linked directly to the Kappas program. The web link is in the chat box, Jim, if you don't have that open yet.
I did. I actually hit that link.
Great.
So I'm presuming that somewhere on my computer that it's open. Yeah, it is. Okay. Twice now. Am I still there? Yeah.
So I have a question about so UUSC, is that a separate organization from the UUA, or
Yes.
is it okay?
Yes, it's totally separate, but they work in somewhat in concert with each other.
It's got its own legal, its own legal entity. It's got an endowment, what have you. They're sort of sister brother organizations, for want of a better term.
And so are they approached by organizations in need of the support, or does UUSC identify organizations? Like, how does the hooking up with the work that gets done? It might have been explained in the video, but I'm curious more about that.
Some of both. You know, the UUSC isn't some mammoth organization that everybody around the world's heard of. So it does, it's not to say it's teeny either, but it reaches out quite a bit. And, you know, once you've reached out to a group of people in a certain area, other groups may hear about it. So there's a fair amount of word of mouth as well, but it's very active. The staff is very active in seeking opportunities to be of assistance.
Also, they have linked up organizations and sponsored meetings between different organizations, particularly in the area of climate change and possible disasters, possible displacements. So I know they had a big conference between people in Alaska and some of the Pacific Island communities.
Yeah, they've gotten quite involved with the Pacific Island communities. There's a movement for an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice at the UN. And they just petitioned, so the International Court of Justice has accepted the petition. They haven't issued a ruling yet, and I have no idea if and when they will. I don't know whether you've worked with the UN, it's somewhat bureaucratic, but in any event, the UUSC was involved with that effort.
In fact, there's a video about that on the website if you're interested in it.
Yeah.
Yes. Rita, yeah.
I'm interested in the staff and who gets to be on the staff. And also, is it a paid, full-time paid job? Or is the staff affiliated but also doing other projects of their own or working for other organizations?
As far as I know, the staff is full-time paid.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
It's full-time paid. In fact, the staff, I guess the senior members aren't, but there's a union. So it's unionized.
Is it really? That I
Oh,
didn't know.
yeah, it's unionized and
Oh, yeah, they're supporting it elsewhere, right?
yeah, so it the back office, there are 10 or 15 people involved in operations and back office things, and they're all unionized. I don't know whether the people that do the social justice work are part of the union or not. In any event, I know there's
The College of Social Justice also has auxiliary staff that are, many of them are religious professionals that work in congregations, but they are part of the staff that lead trips and things. So I know several ministers and religious educators who work with, it's paid by stipend, I think, based on the things they do. So they probably have some part-time staff as well, Rita.
What's been your experience with the College of Social Justice when you've taken trips that they've organized?
They're great. I'm actually working with them right now. I'm collaborating with them to offer a training to religious professionals that want to do justice learning in their congregations, like we're doing at South Church. I get contacted by a lot of church staff, a lot of religious educators, but also ministers who want me to sort of teach them how we do that. And so I pulled in 2 staff members from the College of Social Justice because it feels like it fits right in the work that they're doing, which is really, they're kind of reframing how they do that right now. So it's an offering by the College of Social Justice, and I'm just co-leading the course with them to teach other religious professionals how to lead those kinds of immersive experiences, and also to talk about like the what and the why, and like how to bring it home. That it's sort of place-based justice education. The idea is that you go somewhere, you have an experience, so that when you come home, you look at your own home community in a different way. So that I really appreciate their lens and how they approach this work. I've learned a lot from them. And
wonderful.
Great.
Mary, did you have, yeah, go ahead.
Well, John, you mentioned that you were on the finance committee. Through the years that you've been involved, what kind of things that have you done in terms of volunteering?
well, that leads into a whole different set of questions. I retired from the business world when I was 70. I'm 81 now, but I went back and got a master's degree in global development policy from BU. And since then, I've done all kinds of different, really consulting type work, some of it for the State Department, but most recently I was, my area of expertise is international tax and related finance matters, and I was head of something called tax and fiscal reform for a small UK charity that provides legal services, pro bono legal services to organizations around the world with a focus in sub-Saharan Africa. And I did that for longer than I planned to do it for, but not quite 3 years. I retired officially at the end of last year. So I've done a lot of work there. And prior to that, did some consulting work. So I don't know, a variety of different countries, largely in Africa, but some elsewhere as well.
I think Mary also wanted to know about the finance committee at UUSC and your work there.
Yeah, well, on the finance committee, we have a small group. It's probably about half a dozen. And, you know, like a lot of finance areas, there are all kinds of policy questions. You know, for example, recently they sold their building for I think maybe $15 million in Cambridge. They sold it to the city of Cambridge, actually. They're leasing back part of it, and there are some expenses associated with that. But the net result was somewhere between in the neighborhood of $10–11 million. So what do you do with that? And do you designate some of that for repatriations? So that was one issue the finance committee considered. The other issue is, what do you do with the endowment? How much money should go into the endowment? A major source of funding for the endowment, frankly, is from estates of, you know, deceased people have left to bequest to the UUSC. And, you know, that varies depending on how many people die and what their net worth was at the time they died. In any event, you know, how much of that money should go into the endowment, how much should go for current, you know, work, and what's the purpose of the endowment? How big should it be? So those are the kind of questions we address, and then there are a lot of just sort of operational questions. What's the budget? You know, how does it look? How much is the union, you know, settlement going to be, so on and so forth.
Those are not small questions, John.
How about you, Irene?
Pardon?
Oh, I'm a long retired social work professor.
Oh, me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not long retired, but retired.
So where did you teach?
UNH.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They had a great social work program. They have a good one, or at least.
They do. Yeah, they do. So what have you done in terms of volunteering for the UUSC?
Mostly as a steward, attending meetings and so on. Other than that, not direct.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Any final comments or questions?
Deep appreciation. It's really nice, John and Irene. It's really nice to get to talk get the sort of personal detail of the long relationship that you've had with this organization, and I am super excited for the broadening awareness at South Church for this work. I love the connection Jim's making with the immigration work, and I think the organization too is really thinking about how to be in relationship with congregations in different ways, or maybe they've always been thinking that way, but it feels like there's some fresh ideas and energy around that. So that's very exciting to me. I think that kind of building within our UU networks and building globally those relationships, that sort of relationship driven model resonates a lot for me. So I appreciate hearing about it.
Well, there is a whole, perhaps I should have answered Mary differently. John and I have been representatives to South Church for years for the UUSC. We did do the guest at your table and have brought Bill Schultz and then Mary Catherine and one other person to speak on Justice Sunday.
I will say that the COVID thing sort of derailed things, but up until that point, we sort of did annual drives. We were also members of a church called Fourth Universalist in New York City, but we have not gotten involved with the UUSC there. It's not in any material way.
And since we're both 81, we would love to find two more people or who would begin to be the liaison to the UUSC. We'd be glad to back them up, but if there's someone who would like to do that, that would be great. Kirsten, keep your ears open for some
Well,
younger folk.
so.
Younger is anything below 70, Kirsten.
I said once, I overheard a conversation at social hour once between two elders at our church, and one of them said to the other, well, you're just 82. You'll understand when you're 90.
Well, good for them.
And may we all get there.
Well, John and Irene, thank you so much for taking time out and sharing your knowledge about the UUSC. I know I've learned a lot, and it seems like everybody else from here had good questions, and I'm sure they've also learned a lot. So thank you. And thank to every one of you, Jim and Rita and Mary and Anne and Kirsten for, just coming and taking time out to be here tonight and support this event as well. So I'm going to end with some closing words. And these words were requested from Irene. So let's see where they are. So this is by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And so I'm going to extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, folks.
Have a good night. Thank you.
I don't.